Hey everyone, Tony D with a quick hot take on some advice for Nancy Pelosi. Man, Nancy Pelosi is having a rough year, and the year's barely started. I I did a book. I don't know. You guys probably have seen it on my Amazon page. It's called "F You, I'm Italian: Why We Italians Are Awesome," and I list a lot of famous people who are Italian. Nancy Pelosi being one of them because she's the first female Speaker of the House. So the thing is about Nancy, she is very stubborn and really hasn't changed her strategy much. So she was on the Sunday talk shows. This is Joan, by the way. Talking about the Iranian protests, which I talked about in a previous video. Now, in the videos that are coming out, the Iranian college students are purposely avoiding walking over American and Israeli flags that have been painted on a square at the college as a sign of, we're not against these countries, we're against the regime. And there's also video all over Twitter of these same students tearing down posters of the Ayatollah and Soleimani, basically showing that they're not fans. And this doesn't mean that everybody in Iran is against the Ayatollah and the regime. Far from it. There are plenty of groups that are entrenched, and for whatever reason they make their money, the Republican Guard and the Quds Force, and there's probably a whole bunch of financiers who benefit greatly from the regime. But the thing is, the idea that, the United States, which very few media outlets have any kind of people in Iran, can just instantly say, well, the Iranians, they're mad because we blew up Soleimani. That's not really an accurate statement. Some of the country might be mad we blew up one of their generals, but it's clear there's at least a significant minority who is happy we blew them up, and there's a lot of reasons that they would be. Soleimani was in charge of the military, and the military there shot a bunch of protesters. They kill protesters in Iran, so they won't be fans of the military of the regime, obviously. It's kind of like the Hong Kong protesters, right? So the fact that Trump's coming out and supporting these Iranian protesters is par for the course for any American president, because Iran has been on the S list of the United States for a long time. Ever since '79, when they took the hostages, Iran has been considered an enemy of the United States one way or another. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't had attempts to reconcile, but the thing is, none of those attempts have really worked. The people of Iran and the regime of Iran, they remember that the United States propped up the Shah, and he was a really bad guy, and that's what led to the revolution. So they're very distrustful of the United States for good reason. But the regime ain't better. The regime is bad. It's oppressive. It kills people. It does horrible things to people. And, there's no reason that the college students in Iran, who are probably more educated than the rest of the populace and probably more westernized than the rest of the populace, wouldn't, chafe under that regime. And Nancy Pelosi's on these Sunday talk shows, not defending the regime openly, but she's kind of like trying to spin the protests. Well, it's not really about that. It's about lots of things. That's technically true, but it's distinction without a difference, Nancy. Iran is still the enemy of the United States, and to give the leadership of Iran and it's the leadership that chants death to America, to give them any credence is really, really horrible optics. the thing you should be doing, and I said this also in a previous video, is saying that drone strikes are unconstitutional and no president should have them. The fact that you say that Trump shouldn't do this particular drone strike is grossly hypocritical, because Obama did tons of drone strikes. He set up the Matrix, which is what he called the system by which he chooses people to be killed by flying robots. And that was really unconstitutional. And Bush started it, and he basically had no system. So really any system that's unaccountable, that murders people with a flying robot, is bad and unconstitutional. So the fact that you wouldn't call that out during the Bush administration and during the Obama administration, and now you're calling it out against Trump in this one instance, after, going after the guy hammer and tongs with the Russian Gate investigation for 3 straight years, you just have no credibility here. Nobody believes it. Nobody believes that you believe it. And, you look like a moron on the Sunday talk shows trying to spin for the Iranian regime, which is not really, you're not really trying to do that. What you're trying to do is you're trying to spin against Trump. But it sounds like you're spinning against the Iranian regime, which led to this hilarious meme that's all over Twitter of Schumer and Pelosi dressed in a turban and a hijab. It was a very funny picture. And Trump retweeted it. So, this is your comeuppance. The impeachment continues to go horribly. Supposedly this week, the impeachment's finally going to be delivered to the Senate. But what that's going to do, it's going to hobble all the senators who are in the Democratic race for president. And there's speculation on both sides whether this was on purpose to hobble Sanders and Warren so that Biden could take the nomination. Because Biden's not a senator anymore, and he doesn't have to go to this thing, and neither is Buttigieg. So Biden can probably easily beat Buttigieg, but there was some worry that Sanders could take the nominee, especially if Warren dropped out. So now they're going to be stuck in Washington, with the trial, which is a pointless trial because the Senate runs it anyway. So they're essentially wasting their time, thanks to you holding impeachment up, or not holding it up long enough. And now you're going to have this situation where you've basically helped Biden get the nomination. Now that may be part of the plan. Certainly, I think the DNC bigwigs probably want Biden. They definitely do not want Sanders. Sanders is not going to win in a general election. The polls all show that people in the United States do not like socialism. There's a tiny, hardcore minority of Bernie bros, but you guys are screwed. And on top of that, you will probably leave the party this time after getting screwed twice by the Democrats. And you should. I mean, there needs to be third parties in the United States, and you should start your own party. I don't think socialists are very good. I think they're idiotic. But, I support your right to start a third party, just like the libertarians. And I think you should. Because, quite frankly, you're kind of screwing it up for the Democrats. And, the Democrats need to kind of keep the Republicans in check. So go do that, please. Start the Democratic Socialists of America. And, it's already kind of established, and, become like a real political party. It'll take you many, many, many years, but maybe you'll get a couple of, you already had Bernie, and he's basically won, and you can probably get AOC to join you and a couple others. So, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? Certainly you're not going to win, in my view. But Nancy, listen, if you want to regain the credibility of the Democratic Party and yourself, I think what you really need to do is first, you take like a week or two off. Just just get out of the news cycle. Just get out of it. Let the whole thing reset a couple of times. Let people kind of forget your various missteps for a couple of weeks. And then come back. And the first thing I think you should do is try to give yourself some credibility by acknowledging some of Trump's minor accomplishments. Or acknowledge the accomplishments in a minor way. Nothing that's going to kiss his butt, but like just something like as simple as, Trump has really done some good things for the economy. I think it could be improved, but I think obviously the economy's doing well, and we have Trump to thank for that, or something like that. Nothing like too, butt kissy, but enough so we see that you're at least a person who acknowledges reality. Compliment a couple of things, and then just sort of play very conservatively, if you will. Wait to see what happens over the next coming weeks, and then roll out very reasonable comments. And do that for the next, several months until election time. And at least start rebuilding the Democratic Party's and your own credibility. Because it's just absolutely trashed at this point. She was in yet another article talking about Russiagate like it was a foregone conclusion that, that Putin is manipulating Trump and maybe McConnell is being manipulated too. I mean, it's just unseemly at this point. Nobody believes this. And the people who believe this stuff, they're wackos. They're absolute wackadoos. Trump didn't even know he was going to get elected. How could Putin manipulate him? How can you manipulate a guy who's so shameless he'd just lie? The idea that they had this tape and they had a blackmail on Trump. How do you blackmail a guy who would just lie his ass off? You know exactly what he would have said. They come out with the tape, they show like the tape with like his genitals digitized, and Trump just goes, "That's not me. That's not me. That guy looks like me, but it's not me." It wouldn't matter. Wouldn't matter one iota. They caught Trump on tape, saying, "Grab the, what." I'm trying not to curse for YouTube. And it didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt him. That was almost as bad as a P tape would be, as a steel tape would be. His fans literally don't care because they kind of know him as a crazy wild guy who's had sex with a bunch of porn stars and beautiful women. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he's had a few party nights with a bunch of hookers somewhere. And, this idea that they kicked up the ante, that there's some kind of P tape or whatever. I don't believe it. It's just not, to me, that's just not Trump. He's just not that kind of guy. He just straight up likes to bang hot chicks. I mean, that's his thing. And people understand that. So he's had a bunch of wives. He's cheated on his wives. There's not much. The guy's bulletproof in that area. And you should have known that going into this. It's time to drop all this. Just drop it all. It's not doing you any good. If you at least acknowledge that the guy, for being an inexperienced, as Razorfist once said, for being an inexperienced asshat, he's doing pretty good. And it's true. I mean, I didn't expect him to do this well. I really didn't. I thought his economic plan would be an absolute disaster, and it's done rather well. Now, whether that will do well with, years down the future, I mean, he seems to be building a legacy for himself. You have to acknowledge the guy's legacy. Acknowledge reality at this point. And just stop this reflexive reaction to everything Trump does. If you just didn't react for 6 months, then after a while, Trump's taunts would sound kind of hollow, when Trump trotted out a picture of you guys, in front of the Iranian flag, like this meme did, you could say, "Oh, come on, that was from 6 months ago. We're past that." That's where you want to get, so you can actually start to criticize him. And when you criticize him, you need to criticize him realistically. You can't just go after him personally, even though he does that to you. You could say, well, the president's very rude. The president shouldn't be on Twitter or whatever, but you can't say it like it's just Trump, because lots of presidents do lots of horrible things. And if you're not going to acknowledge, for instance, that Barack Obama drone bombed a lot of people without permission, then you can't go after Trump for drone bombing Soleimani in a country where we drone bomb tons of people. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And you should have protested. And we all told you, all us libertarians told you, don't let this go. You don't want people with this power. But you thought you were going to be in the White House. How'd that work out for you?